Good afternoon, everybody, from wherever you are in the world. Welcome to this second webinar that the Careers and Employability team are running now here at the Royal Aeronautical Society. So it's an absolute pleasure for us to welcome you, and we're going to be conducting a series of these webinars sort of over the coming weeks and months. So I hope you can join us again for another webinar in the future. But hopefully today this session will be able to give you some really useful hints, tips and insights into sort of how to reinvent yourself within your careers. Just a brief sort of biography to myself. So my name is Nick Davis. I am the Employability and Skills Executive at the Royal Aero Society. My role focuses on creating the sort of awareness and communicating the availability of jobs, associated skills, qualifications and pathways within the entire aerospace and aviation community. And I'm delighted to be joined by our wonderful panelists that you can see, Arpad Szakal, Victoria Kopp, and also my lovely colleagues RAeS and Rishi from the careers team at the Society as well. So if I can just start with Arpad, just want to give a brief overview in terms of the background to you, followed by Victoria, then RAeS and Rishi.
Hi everyone, thank you, Nick. In terms of my background, I'm an aviation lawyer by training, currently work in executive search and leadership consulting, which means that we provide strategic talent assessment and executive search solutions to a broad range of organizations within the transport sector, but also in the broader industrial arena. Prior to my career in search, I worked at two of London's best-known aviation departments, handled predominantly EU-related regulatory matters, passenger rights, and also liability matters. And I earned my LLM degree at the Air and Space Law Institute at Leiden University in the Netherlands. And maybe I would also mention, as a guest lecturer or guest speaker, I presented various executive education programs around the world, teaching on a range of career management topics, things like communication skills, career planning, transitions, onboarding, and published on the topic of gender balance, diversity in the aviation and aerospace industries. So that's about me. Victoria, I think you are the next one.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Victoria Kopp. I'm the head of supply chain and procurement for part of BAE Systems. So background, I am a chartered aeronautical engineer with the Royal Aeronautical Society by trade, and I spent my early career working in engineering at Airbus and then at Kinetic, and then moved into some more management and customer and supplier facing activity through probably the last sort of 15 years or so. And have worked across a number of different organisations and for myself as well during that, and joined BAE Systems about 7 years ago in the commercial side of the house, and more lastly moved over to procurement, managing supplier relations, and in a leadership role again now for a part of our maritime business. In addition to that, I balance my time with being a working mother fairly recently as well, and also I hold some non-executive director roles as well, one with the Air League Trust and also with the Inspiring Leadership Trust as well. So diversity and inclusion and skills and employability is something I'm very much passionate about, and do quite a lot of work in that space based on my spare time and in my sort of career history as well. So really pleased to be with you today, and hopefully we'll share some insights that will be of value to you.
Thanks, Victoria. So RAeS, if you want to just give everybody a bit of background to yourself. Oh, just on mute.
Hi everyone, I'm RAeS Azusi, and I'm head of skills and issues. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, so I look after the Society's careers outreach, employability and skills programs, which includes our diversity inclusion activities, some programs to support women in the industry, including the Alta Mentoring Programme. I'm a member of a number of skills groups within the industry, including the AGP Skills Working Group and also the Aviation Industry Skills Board, and the Trailblazer Group for apprenticeships for aerospace and airworthiness, and hopefully can help with some insights into some of the issues that have been raised in the recent weeks, and to give some advice on some of the things that our members do to try and help their careers through thick and thin. Okay.
Thanks, Roz. Rishi, do you want to give everybody a brief background?
Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Rishi Radia, and I am the Careers and Outreach Officer here at the Royal Aeronautical Society. My primary job is to assist with some of our various outreach programs, including the Cool Aeronautics program for primary school children, as well as assisting Roz and Nick with other various outreach programs, be it external events, large shows, air shows, and also going into universities and colleges to support the careers aspect of the society. My previous background is in aviation. I started my journey training to be an airline pilot. So I got my ATPL many years ago now. From then on, I've also moved on to work in various areas of aviation, including ground handling. I've also worked as a member of cabin crew for EasyJet, and most recently I was at British Airways in operations. But I've sort of taken a transition to work for the society so that I can support in helping people like you guys achieve your dreams. So it's a pleasure to be here this afternoon, and I very much hope that you get everything that you need from this webinar and more. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks ever so much, Rishi. So before we delve into the topics, I'm just going to briefly run through a bit of information for you guys. So we're going to have a fireside discussion between all of us in terms of, and we're going to discuss 5 main topics. We're then going to have a bit of a Q&A at approximately 3:45. Please add your questions to the questions tab as we go along. If people can just refrain from raising their hand, we've got quite a lot of people with us today, so we're just unable to sort of answer everybody's queries. But questions, if you have any, please raise them in the questions tab, and we'll try to answer them as in the Q&A. So we'll try to answer as many as possible in the time frame, but you can always email us afterwards at the careers@aerosociety.com email address there, and we can follow this up offline as well if you do have any questions. There are also some useful resources available for you in the handouts tab, so there should be 2 resources there for you that you can access straight away. So one is just a bit of a careers and employability information handout, and then the other one is our top tips handout following this session today. So hopefully that will be there's some useful insights there for you. So the themes that we're going to be discussing today, so we're going to cover 5 altogether, and these range from preparing yourself for sort of turbulent times ahead in the industry. As we know, it's quite a difficult time at the moment, so we're going to be covering some information about that, followed by some useful hints and tips about how best you can be sort of using this time that we've got now to sort of raise your profile, raise your personal brand, and also some tips about sort of virtual networking and recruitment processes, followed by discussions around your mental health and well-being. It is sort of Mental Health Awareness Week at the moment, so that will hopefully give you some really useful tips on to sort of how to sort of maximize your self-confidence and uphold your mental health within this situation. And then we're going to answer as many questions as possible in the Q&A. So we'll start off with the first topic that we're going to cover, and I'll invite Arpad and Victoria just to briefly sort of start off with this one. But this first one really outlines how you can prepare yourself for times ahead, and it is going to be quite tricky, and there is no denying that the sector is facing great levels of uncertainty. But you know, now is the time to reflect on the positives in your professional careers and review your ability to sort of reinvent yourself. So I'm going to open this up to Arpad and Victoria, if you guys want to kick off with some of your valuable insights.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. Thank you for the introduction. Yeah, in this theme, the first theme, we wanted to really just discuss some of the important things that you can do today, whether you're employed or furloughed or actively looking for your next opportunity, what you can do really to prepare for what is really set to be a very turbulent time in the aviation industry. I think one of the most important things to highlight here is the importance of self-review and the importance of being agile and have the ability to reinvent yourself. When really a career for life or a career at a company is no longer the case for most people, there is such thing as the career nomad, which changes roles, sectors, industries very frequently, almost every couple of years. I think that's the sort of agility that a lot of people will have to prepare themselves. And I think one of the best ways to do that is really to take stock of your transferable skills, develop a toolbox, and understand your strength, your development areas, and basically find the gaps. And once you've determined what you want to do, then you can really take the next step and get those necessary skills that you lack. I think it's basically we're going to be talking about the importance of getting some guidance, getting some support, and being mentored. I think those are things that the society can help with as well, because there are some schemes that you can take advantage of. And really, also what you can do right now, again, is really set up information interviews, getting smart about the various sectors, industries that are actively hiring, of course, because there are quite a number of them, although they are not aviation or aerospace related in the strict sense of the word. I think it's useful to just look into them and get familiar with them. And really, another thing I wanted to mention is the concept of having a portfolio career. I think the importance of not really depending on one employer, I think it's going to be very important going forward. Having multiple side hustles, having multiple part-time roles, full-time add-ons. I think those are going to be the main the main ways that people will find employment going forward, because your next role may not be a full-time permanent contract. And just wanted to get your views, Victoria, as well. Did you have any mentors during your careers, and did they make any difference to your career development, basically, throughout the years?
For me, I think mentors are absolutely key, and I've been lucky enough to have both informal and formal mentors throughout my career. And people have very kindly sort of offered themselves and their services, and you get some line managers or colleagues as you go through your journey that kindly sort of act as a mentor or coach to you. When you're looking more strategically at your career plan and your development in particular, and how I work with my teams, is really looking at what you want to achieve, and in particular the person's role that you might want in 5 or 10 years. And I find a really good technique is actually to approach that person, whether it be in your company or in the wider industry, and actually speak to them and ask if you can establish a mentoring relationship. And that's obviously going to be based on chemistry as well, but really to understand what that role means in the future. And you can hear it from the horse's mouth. That person that's been successful and got where you'd like to go is absolutely a fantastic resource to support you along that journey and guide you in where you are in your leadership in your career at the moment, to get where you want to be. With regard to finding those individuals, obviously, if you know that person you want to go to, that's fantastic. If not, it's about using your network, getting people to refer you. Again, if you've got colleagues and managers that believe in you and will want to help to make those connections for you to find that appropriate person. There's also some other really good resources, in particular, looking on the sort of female side of things. I know the Royal Aeronautical Society and the University of West England have set up the Alta Mentor platform for women. in the industry and connecting with some senior leaders. And as I say, I've had mentors throughout my career in different guises, both men and women, predominantly men actually, working in the defence side of the house. But one thing I found really useful looking at different aspects of my career is more recently, I myself offer my services through the mentoring platform, the Alpha mentoring platform, but also I got some guidance myself about as being a new mum, returning to work, and making that transition and looking to get to that executive board position as well. And I've really benefited from that. So there's a lot of great ways about of having a relationship and finding that route, but really it's about understanding what you definitely want to get out of that relationship. And also I always think with mentoring, setting up a charter is really useful as well, to try to set the ground rules, the sort of topics you might cover, how much you like to be challenged, and what sort of advice you're after to make sure you get the best out of that relationship. And there's a two-way aspect as well, so make sure the mentor and the mentee get some value out of having that discussion as well. But mentor is absolutely key, I think, regardless of stage you're in your career, but in particular in these times now, getting that advice and guidance from somebody who has a real independent view for you, I think is really, really important.
No, that's great. Thank you for that. And talking about transferable skills and really thinking about what skills you have in your toolbox that you can use in other industries or other sort of parts of the industry or the broader aviation and aerospace ecosystem. What are some of the broad general skills that players such as your organization, PA Systems, are looking for in the defense and aerospace industry? Can you give us a sense?
In the transferable skills piece, it's particularly around the softer skills and the leadership skills. So for me, it's about, and for our employers really, it's about having the right approach to work and to life. And I think if you've got that right approach and you've got some transferable skills that you can bring with you and you can adapt and implement them in any organization, it really does open many doors across many sectors for you. So in particular, looking at those transferable skills, communication skills are key, influencing and stakeholder management, being able to articulate yourself clearly in a written form as well, and really also having that understanding of wider context. And I think, again, for those who are in that career transition piece at the moment, and might have the opportunity for a little more time to reflect and to also look into the industry, both whether you're on the aerospace and aviation side or on the defence side of aerospace and defence, is looking at what the industry trends are happening at the moment, really delving into those and getting a good insight and working out where you fit in with that, and what you can bring to the table. Having that sort of wider picture really does bring credibility to candidates in particular. But I think for me, it's the softer skills and so those leadership aspects as well. And looking at your personal leadership style, understanding which situations it's appropriate for and how you adapt and change both to organizations, situations, circumstances, and projects and programs that you might be working on. So it's a really good time to self-reflect and understand what is in your personal toolbox, what is it that you're most proud of, and a good way to do that as well is speaking to current and past colleagues and friends and family as well, or regarding feedback from them as to what they see your key strengths are. And what they think you're really best at and would advocate you for, and playing to those strengths. And then in the counter side of that is understanding your development areas, and then again taking your time at the moment to develop on those. In particular, when you're in an interview situation, it's really important to be self-aware and know those development areas in your transferable skill set as well, to really show that you're a credible and authentic person as well, and you've got that that self-awareness and understanding that you can bring to a role.
Great. Another thing I wanted to cover with you, Victoria, on this particular theme is really your experience working in the defense sector as a female. I mean, the aviation sector is famously male-dominated. It would be really good to just get your thoughts on what have been the barriers that you were facing and how did you overcome them during your career to date?
So for me, it's been about 18 years in the sector, so life has changed very much since when I started to where it is now, and in the right direction, absolutely. So it is a very male-dominated area. It is getting more and more female orientated. You're seeing a lot more female people in senior positions, which is absolutely fantastic. And I think there's the piece around people say you can't be what you can't see. And now we've got more of those senior role models. It really does open doors and inspires people to want to move forward as well. When you're looking at some of the barriers, I think sometimes if for us as ladies, we aren't as good at selling ourselves. If we look at a job specification, you know, traditionally, and this is broad brush at the moment, but men will look at it and think, okay, this might be a stretch for me, but I'll apply. Women in the main tend to look at things and think, actually, if I can't, against each competency, sort of say examples 5 times over on each one, I won't apply. But actually, it's pushing yourself out there and taking those opportunities, asking for what you want. And I think, in particular in male-dominated environments, it's a more direct way of engaging with people and being clear about that. So again, female traits don't necessarily naturally put themselves in that way, but it's adapting your communication style and your leadership styles to meet that. Barrier-wise, for me, I've been quite lucky. I think a lot of that's to do with my mentors, but also to do with my determination. And I think in particular, again, if you can articulate what you want, so if you've got a clear development plan or career plan, that's fantastic. If you don't know where you want to be quite yet, but you know who you are and what you like and enjoy, it's also good to articulate in that way. I always say a plan is a living document. And somebody said to me once, if you haven't got a plan, you haven't got anything, but it should be a guide. It doesn't have to be a sort of panacea and exactly where you go, and how you get there can sometimes be a bit of a zigzag as well. Careers don't run in straight lines. It's about taking the opportunities as they come and considering wider pieces as well, and learning about yourself as you go to reach that end goal. But I think for me, we're getting more of a balanced playing field in the industry. But I think you have to be a little bit resilient sometimes as a lady and stick to your guns and what you would like. There is the opportunity is open for everybody. It's about what you would like to do with your career and those opportunities that you can take, and asking for what you want is probably my 3 key tips for those women in the aerospace and defence sector.
Very good. I don't know if Nick or Ross or Rishi would like to add anything to from the society's perspective.
I think you guys pretty much covered absolutely everything there. I mean, from my point of view, I think you're always going to be developing your skills. I think there's that sort of phrase that goes around in terms of, we were just discussing this a few minutes ago about committing yourself to lifelong learning. And I think that is really important for those of us that we want to become sort of leaders within the industry. We want to advance the industry further. Committing yourself to always learning, always keeping up to date. So I'm just reiterating Arpad and Victoria's points there in terms of that. I think it's vitally important that you continue to develop your skills, whether that is, say, identifying those gaps by sort of doing a bit of a gap analysis, or and then finding out you might you give yourself the options then to actually do something about it. Whether it's you go and do a course. For me, I had a gap of about 3 to 3.5 years before I went back to university to do a postgraduate course. And it took that reflective sort of time, or that time of reflection, to actually realize I've got a bit of a gap there. And it was people within the organization, my managers at the time, who were sort of giving me some really useful hints and tips and advice to actually go and think about going to do a postgraduate course and so on and so forth. But I think that's pretty much it from me. I'm not sure if Roz or anyone else has anything to add.
No, I agree with everything you said, Nick, Victoria, and Arpad. I think what's really important, is to accept that, sometimes things happen that are beyond your control, and you can be going along quite nicely in your career, and things can be going quite well, and then you have something that is, happens as an external factor, and it can be a real challenge, to because it feels unfair, it feels very unsettling as well. But by trying to to reach out to networks and really take advantage of this time to maybe do some of the things you've not had time to do. So perhaps you've always wanted to look for a mentor and you've never really found the time to do it. So, you know, there are lots of networks. Obviously, Victoria's mentioned Alta for women in the industry, but of course, there's things like LinkedIn as well, where you can really, you know, come across all kinds of amazing people, and people do want to help. I think what we've seen from putting on these seminars, you know, getting the support from people like Arpad and Victoria, and obviously in our last one, Jenny, is that people do want to help. We do want to retain talent, and we will do our best, you know, to see you through this process. But it's a great time to try and do something new. And in terms of sort of further study and knowledge, I know it's not always easy to sign up for things if you don't have the funds to do so right now, but there are so many free webinars and online learning programs at the moment, particularly as people are looking to really push out some of the products they have. So it's a perfect opportunity to try and get some free training as well.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Ros. Thanks everyone for that. So that's sort of the first topic covered there. So we'll move on now to our second theme of the day, which is how you can bridge the gap between job roles. So basically going back to, you know, how you can use this time effectively, and especially when it comes to sort of expanding your skills, knowledge, and as we've already mentioned, it's really important to keep in touch with everything that's going on. And as Ros mentioned, there's a vast range of sort of free online materials out there now, whether it's webinars, podcasts, blogs, industry news articles, and these are great in terms of supporting and expanding your horizons and just keeping bang up to date with what's going on in the industry. But again, I'll invite Victoria and Arpad to sort of enlighten us with their expertise on this one.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. I think this was one of the most requested sort of topics to cover by various people. I think a lot of individuals who are in the position of like having to look for new employment, they don't know or not often know what to do with their time. I think a few points worth highlighting here. I think the role of gap job is quite important here. Maintaining income, even if it's not in executive roles, it provides flexibility for the individual. It's a clearly defined contract with exit dates. So if you come across with an opportunity which is more interesting or which is full-time, then you can leave it. But it also provides a lot of benefits and flexibility for the organization as well. Rather than investing you long-term, it basically provides them also with the flexibility of just having you for that particular project. And it's not you're not acting as an advisor or as a consultant, but basically you're responsible and accountable leader or manager, and you're expected to implement and manage the project or the business initiative that you've been brought in. To solve. Another way, of course, what you've mentioned, Nick and Ross, is really the upskilling and reskilling through those are the sort of skills that we are seeing as really coming up. Whatever you are applying, there will be a data or tech element to it, basically. So I think also sharing, building, leveraging your expertise through what they call thought leadership, whether these are podcasts or creating relevant contact to really just get discovered, because at the end of the day, it's all about your ability to get picked on by the relevant people, like the recruiters, search consultants, whatever you call them. You need to be discoverable, and the best way to do that is to create relevant and value-add content. And some of the other ways that you can spend your time with is really offering your skills, offering your expertise to others, whether these are non-executive roles, trustee roles, board roles, or mentoring, whether it's in a business setting or in a personal capacity, and also, of course, volunteering. That's also something for charitable causes that can enhance your skill set and put you into a really good position when it comes to your next interview. You've got something to talk about. But Victoria, would be really good to get your thoughts on this as well, and really just understand whether you had any experience with either interim roles or just maintaining your professional development or continued professional development. Your life when you were looking for roles.
I think we've lost Arpad there, so apologies.
I got most of his questions.
So got most of that, Victoria.
Certainly did, not a problem. So we start with sort of interim roles and that bridging the gap with other things that you can do. I think for me, especially as a sort of a hiring manager, when you're looking at people's CVs, it's really important to have that continuity. And we're not always in a position, and I think throughout everyone's career, we'll go through a redundancy period, whether you're at risk or whether you end up being made redundant as well. So it's not a taboo thing, but it's also about how you spend that time in that gap as well, and what you do with yourself. So as Arpad mentioned, some really good things around taking on interim roles, whether it's obviously in your subject matter expertise or whether you're looking more widely and actually branching out and bringing your skill set to a different area for that period of time as well. Pick something that really adds value to your CV and will make that good move. But when it comes down to it, having a role it's really easy to find a new job when you're in a job. So I highly recommend taking on interim roles as part of that. In addition, as Arpad mentioned, non-exec roles are fantastic. When you're looking at that portfolio career anyway, which is something obviously I quite enjoy myself, is actually having the opportunity to both give organisations the benefit of your skills, but also for you to get something back and develop through those roles as well. So if you're looking at non-executive type roles, whether that's in other companies, in government, in charity space as well, there's also things like Be the Business, who are currently looking for business mentors for small to medium-sized enterprises at the moment to help them through this challenging period. Only a few hours a month, but things like that are really good to consider because it helps you give back and build your CV and keep your hand in as well during this period. And similarly, obviously we touched on the mentoring before, but that I think again is really key, that you get to keep your leadership skills in touch through providing mentoring to people, but also it's great because you can get reverse mentoring from those that you mentor as well, which I find is we're talking about lifelong learning. It's always a learning day for me when I'm doing mentoring with some of my colleagues. So I think they're great opportunities. The other piece I know Arpad was keen to touch on was around that continued professional development. So for those of you who are having a little bit more time at home at the moment and have that time and capacity to do it, if you're looking at your chartership and things like that, or your professional development in your respective function, it's a great time to really be able to sit back, reflect, put your portfolio together, and then apply and make those applications as well. It is really difficult. I know, having done my chartership when I was doing proper engineering, as I like to say, back in the day, it does take up a lot of time. So having the opportunity to do that right now, I think is fantastic. And adding those qualifications to your CV really will help. But also, if you are on social media like LinkedIn, it's a great way to showcase having achieved that or working towards that. Or again, as if you're going through that continued professional development and you've got areas that you'd like to develop further in, is really identifying those opportunities, reaching out within your network or creating a network around that to do that. And as I mentioned earlier, asking for what you want is really important. There's a lot of people willing to give their time and effort at the moment, and in particular, more prevalent now than ever when people are at home and of an evening would like to give back. So utilise that opportunity and really understand yourself as to what that continued professional development leads to. I think Arpad touched as well, and so did Roz. There's loads of free content out there at the moment. People who went conferences that you would have paid a lot of money for, people are putting online and doing for free and recording it as we are today to put online. So do look through those various channels online. Particularly YouTube has got a wealth of knowledge on there. So have a look at those and really follow what might be in support of your career. But I have to say, I think for me, anything you can do to maximise your time in this sort of gap piece is really key to your success in your next role.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think I had some connection issues. That's why you couldn't hear me for some time, I think. Another thing I wanted to touch on here, Victoria, is according to you or your opinion, what part of the wider aerospace and defense industry will do well and experience growth post-crisis? What would be your view on that?
So for me now, obviously we know that aviation and aerospace are suffering some, and obviously there's some announcements today that obviously unfortunately compound that a little further. However, what I will say is the defence side of the house, of which I'm lucky enough to sit on, is a huge growth area. You know, what we like to call protecting the force is even more important than it ever has been. You know, when the country's in a vulnerable situation as we are with the current virus issue, it means that we need to focus on that defence side even further to protect ourselves and ensure that we continue in the same vein, but in further empowering that. So there are a huge amount of opportunities on the defence side of the house for those that want to make the transition over and could be tempted to do so. I'd highly recommend it, again, across the functions, whether you're a technical engineer, a professional or leadership type engineer, leadership type positions, or the wider functions as well. There's a huge amount of roles, and across the board, we're all tending to increase our recruitment at the moment. So it's a great place to be. And if it isn't an area that you've previously considered within your career, I would really say to people to think about making that move and considering those opportunities as well, because there's a whole range of exciting opportunities out there. And what we are really keen to do is make sure that we retain people within the sectors rather than letting them go out of aerospace in general. So have a look, see what might suit you, and think more broadly about it, and have some of those conversations with the people in your network to see what might suit you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Victoria. Welcome back, Arpad. Thank you very much for that. So I'm just going to invite my colleague Rishi, who's in the background, just going to launch the first poll that I'd really like you guys listening to complete for us. So I'm just going to invite Rishi just to send that poll out to everybody listening. And we'll give you a few seconds to answer that for us. So this question here is just asking if you have been made redundant or you're facing redundancy due to the COVID-19 impact on the sector. So I'll just give you a couple of minutes to answer that. Are we now? We've got half voted. And then we are going to move on to our next topic, which is all talking about sort of how you can raise your profile and your own sort of personal brand for these sort of executive searches and the executive roles within the industry. So Rishi, if I could just invite you to close that poll now. Thank you for those who have answered that for us. Brilliant. So we'll just move on to theme 3. It can often be quite tricky to identify where you can raise your profile, but hopefully Victoria and Arpad will be able to give you some really useful insights into how you can get the most out of certain things, you know, whether it's things such as your CV, your LinkedIn profiles, so on and so forth, just really to optimize yourself and make yourself stand out. So I know from a CV point of view, there are loads and loads of useful sort of hints and tips that you can be doing, and really small things that will make a big difference on a CV. And a CV is still a major part of a recruitment process and an application process, and employers still use these quite regularly. And particularly in the UK market, CVs are still very, very popular, although we know there is a growing trend of online sort of recruitment methods and things like that, but CVs are still vital sort of in the application process. So I'll hand over again to Victoria and Arpad just to give us their.
No, thank you, Nick. Indeed, CVs are still very important, and it's worth bearing in mind that obviously, as a result of the crisis, there will be increased competition for all jobs in the industry and beyond. And one thing to do here is really, a lot of people are not familiar with the distinction between executive search and recruitment. So not all firms are the same. Contingency recruitment companies are hired by an organization and tend to in mid-level to junior sort of roles. They are not exclusive, so there are multiple competing firms working on the same mandate. Search firms, on the other hand, are working on mandates exclusively, and they tend to work on senior level sort of searches. They work on retained mandates, and essentially they don't just provide advice on recruitment or search aspects, but both the broader organizational side of things as well. Leadership assessments and many other areas that they can add value, basically. As a general rule, avoid headhunter agencies and instead find a true search consultant, someone within your industry, someone within your sector who can really properly advise you, not only on the career side of things, but really on how you really can best position yourself to land a role and network with them. So wanted to give you a few pointers as well on the LinkedIn profile things, what executive search people tend to look for. I think it's an optimized profile is really important to elevate yourself and really just make sure that you put in a lot of information, don't overshare, but share enough so that people can figure out what you're good at or what differentiates you, and really usually to learn to share to learn. I think that's a good way to think about what we engage with self-trust. This is how you fortify your online presence. And I think it's really in terms of CVs, you really need to show where you have personally added value, what your story is, what your career narrative is, and mind the gaps. Basically, executive search consultants are quite disturbed with unexplained gaps in your career history. So whatever the reason is, be honest, and yeah, that's always the best policy. But I don't know if you've had any experience with search firms or recruitment firms, Victoria, in your career, either as a candidate or as a client, and what has your experience been?
I've had lucky enough to have experience on both sides of the house. So when I joined BAE Systems, it was an executive search organisation that reached out to me. So I think it's a very good way of engaging, but a lot of it's about getting those organisations to know you. And as you rightly said, Arpad, is making sure your profile is consistent and your CV is both consistent and up to date as well. In particular, when you're looking at working with exec search firms, say as a candidate, I would suggest being open and honest, and always say if you're in a position where you're not looking, you haven't got a role at the moment, be clear with them, tell them why. As I mentioned earlier, it happens to everybody in the fact of the redundancies and things like that, or if you chose to leave as well, be open and honest with them. They respect you for that, and what they like is making sure you've got good quality candidates who they can trust, who they're going to put forward to their clients. So be open and honest with them. Also be clear with them about what you're looking for as well. Again, you can have lots of nice conversations with people, but you have to be really clear about what role you're looking for, what you'd like from it, and also from a salary viewpoint, what your expectations are, and making sure they're realistic as well. So do your research ahead of the game when you're having those conversations to ensure you're within the sort of market rate, but also don't be afraid to ask them whether you what they think your CV would be worth to their particular client as well, and they can give you a good feel for that clearly. So as a hiring manager, again, I find them very useful organisations to deal with, and they're very, very good at finding niche capabilities, in particular in the world I operate in. We do have some unusual requirements sometimes, and looking for some bespoke skill sets. So again, if you've got that subject matter expertise, make sure you're highlighting that both with your engagement with those organisations, but also in your LinkedIn profiles, because sometimes we do go through routes where we have to do get people to do some really key searches on keywords and things like that. I think it's a good and positive engagement, but treat them as a professional organisation that they are, and make sure those engagements are positive as well, and always make sure you gain feedback through engaging with those recruiters, whether they choose to put you forward or not. But it's really important to find out why that is, and build on that as well. So I think, yeah, it's a great experience with them, and it's, you know, particularly now, they can take a lot of the legwork for you for finding a new role as well.
Thank you very much, both. I'm just going to invite.
That's great.
Oh, Arpad, do you want to say
there's a few more areas that we're going to cover, I think, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, that's fine. Sorry, just a bit conscious of time, but that's fine. I think we need to cover this. So
No,
carry on, please. Yeah.
So a couple of key LinkedIn tips I can give you for anybody looking more widely is at the top of your LinkedIn, you've got a headline. This is really important, and the first 40 characters are what comes up on searches for recruiters. So don't waste them with any filler words. Use your title or the title you would like. So if you are a commercial director or a chartered engineer, put that in your title if that's what you're looking for people to find you. And again, don't use and things like that. A nice slash line will do. But it's really important to maximize your searchability and make sure that's key. And similarly with your statement about yourself, says 1,000 words, a couple of sentences. Really, really key to keep that short, snappy, nice, and also include a profile picture. And be assured that people, recruiters and line managers always check your CV against your LinkedIn profile. So make sure that they're the correct point of truth, and also make sure you're selling yourself to your best of your ability on those as well. So I think for me, that's really important. The other thing on your LinkedIn is making sure as well that we talked about those insights you can bring, is create relevant content. So if you've got the time now as well, is put the content together that you think is as useful, brings insights and value to other people, and use the right hashtags as well within that. So people follow hashtags, and again, people who are interested in what you're doing. So if you're looking at aviation sustainability, use that in there to be able to draw people into your network. Again, who might want to engage with you, who might have roles, who might have just shared interests. But it's a really good way of building your network and showing and demonstrating the value to any of your stakeholders, what you can bring to the party and what you can offer as well with your skills and experience.
Yeah, completely agreed. I think you've covered it really well, Victoria. Is there anything that Ross or Nick or Rishi would like to add?
I just want to add one thing, because obviously we're particularly aiming today at those people who perhaps haven't had to be in the job market for a while. You might be a bit like me, who I'm not that particularly confident with, LinkedIn and using these sort of social media networks. So it's really important to take the advice, particularly from Victoria, and not to be afraid as well. To see it's a really crucial part now of the sort of search process. And if you need advice, we talked a lot about mentoring, but you can also do this kind of reverse mentoring, when perhaps you can find someone a bit younger who's very confident with social media and will help you through that process as well, and hold your hand a little bit. But it will really make a difference, so it's a great time to try these things, even if you've not done it before. And I think you'll find it will really benefit your networks, not only now, but when you're actually in employment again. You will find some really useful links for future projects and things as well. So yeah, I just think it's really important not to be afraid of it if it's something you're not generally confident with.
Perfect. Thank you both. Thank you all very much for that. So before we move on to the next theme, I'm just going to invite Rishi just to send out the last poll for this session. So Rishi, if I could just invite you to send that out to everybody, please. And let's have a look there. Okay. Brilliant. So this one here is just asking you, are you concerned about the sector's recovery and the possible impact on job prospects in aerospace and aviation? So be really grateful if you could just complete that as soon as possible for us, please. Thank you very much. And then we will move on to the next topic. So there's a few coming in there. Great. Just another couple of seconds there. Brilliant. Rishi, if I could just invite you to close that for now, please. Thank you very much. We're now going to move on to talking a bit more about sort of the application and recruitment processes. So many organizations now, as we've been discussing, are sort of switching to sort of virtual and online methods of recruitment. I know myself, for a few previous jobs I've had in the aviation industry, you know, my last role in sort of commercial flight operations was very focused on this sort of virtual interview method. You know, I had to do video interviews and Skype interviews, and you know, they are sort of becoming the norm now. Face-to-face interviews are still you know, a big part of the process, but I think particularly now in the world that we're going into, sort of post-virus, I think a lot of organizations are going to be switching to this method of recruitment, particularly for interviews and assessments. So again, I'll invite Arpad and Victoria just to give us some of their insights and experiences, particularly on the virtual world of recruiting and assessing.
Yeah, Nick, thank you. Certainly, going forward, especially recruitment is going to be online until the very end. A couple of tips wanted to share when it comes to video interviews, when it comes to performing in front of your computer, really. I think it's quite important not to be camera shy, speaking in sound bites, like 20, 30 seconds for each answer. That tends to be the right sort of time to spend answering the question, but also paying attention to your non-verbal communication, posture, facial expressions, and so forth. I think it's quite important to really just work on those things as well, and paying attention to your surroundings, what's in the room, no distractions. I think that's quite important as well. But I think when it comes to the beginning of the recruitment process, it's what we are seeing is that it's really Zoom, Skype, and any other ways of interacting. Widely used not only with aviation and aerospace related organizations, but more general. Personality questionnaires are quite common. They are used to assess a person's workplace behavior, style, and preferences, how they typically like to act. Ability tests that measures a person's ability to perform or carry out different tasks. They've been found quite a good indicator or predictor of future job performance. I'm talking about verbal, numerical, logical sort of tests. Situational judgment tests are quite widely used as well. They offer a really good way to find out the candidate's response to real life scenarios relating to the job and the organization to which they are applying. But also motivation and value-based assessments are becoming really common as well. They have a focus on an individual's values and motivations in the workplace, basically. And the last one I wanted to mention is competency-based assessments. Airlines tend to use that as well. Basically, there's screening questionnaires used to help identify candidates who are most suitable for the role. Basically, they're also all online. You can, by the way, practice some of these online as well. So it would be really good to just get your thoughts, Victoria, on any experience you may have with online interviews, virtual assessments, either as an interviewee or an interviewer, and what are your top tips specifically for anyone who would consider BAE Systems or any other organization?
The top tips for me are, if you're applying for a role, have the job specification, get a highlighter, mark out those competencies, and then list them out and use the STAR model. So for those of you who've not come across this, it's a way of looking at the competencies, which may well be asked in a competency-based interview, of which, as Arpad said, is the sort of predominant way most organizations tend to look at interviews at all levels, really. So the STAR is situation, task, action, result. So look at each competency and think of an example of, and write down that situation, write down the task that was at hand, write down the actions that you personally did to address that, and look at the results that you personally achieved as well, and make sure it's the sort of I piece. It's really important to make sure you don't say we, and as a team, I know it's, especially as a leader as well, it's really easy to do that, but it's really important, especially as a hiring manager, to understand what you personally contributed to that situation. So prepare for an interview like that. It then really helps you to then answer those questions as they come up, and kind of also remind you of the value you've added personally. When you're looking at virtual interviews, it is quite difficult to make an impact. Again, there's a lot of training out there. There's an organisation called We Are Virtual. Have got some really good webinars again on some of those key skills. But for me, the top tips are have a nice, clear, uncluttered room behind you, so there's no distractions. And in fact, before any interview, regardless if it's virtual or not, but it's more so now it's virtual, is take time to stretch. There's a piece around body language and also around endorphins in your body about if you make yourself really big, so make yourself in a star shape, and then sort of make your arms move around in sort of a windmill. It might sound ridiculous, but actually it really helps blood flow. It helps your endorphins, and the piece about making yourself big actually helps you to gain confidence. And there's a lot of biology behind it, so I won't go into, but it's a really good tip. Also, make sure you've got a good chair, feet flat on the floor, and by doing that, again, you ground yourself. You provide yourself with more credibility through your body language, and you tend to articulate yourself better. As you can probably see a little bit of my hands, I tend to use my hands a lot to talk, but again, use those as well. Don't still necessarily remain stationary. It brings a lot to how you're talking and how you articulate yourself. So that's a skill really for either virtual or in-person interviews, but it's a really good thing to do. And again, I'm happy if anybody wants to get in contact can delve into a little bit more, but for me, that's a real top tip. But also ensure when you're going to any interview that you know you've written down some questions for that interviewer, and you really understand what you want to achieve and get out of that job role as well, and can clearly articulate that. So for me, they're my, as a line manager, they're my top tips.
Okay,
yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, and what are some of the most important skills, both soft and hard, you look for in a candidate, Victoria, when you are the interviewer?
So for me, I think I touched a little bit on earlier, it's communication, it's stakeholder management, it's self-management as well. And in particular, again, if you're in a specific function or role, it's looking at your qualification set, but also your experience on top of that, or your equivalent experience, those qualifications, and being able to articulate the value driven from having that experience as well. So for me, it's those sorts of things, and leveraging a little bit probably more on that transferable skill set, because if you've got to the interview stage, we know you qualified, we know you've got the experience. It's about then demonstrating the value add on what you can do over and above that, and again, those leadership skills on top as well.
Okay, great. Thank you both very much.
Yeah.
We're just going to move on, if that's okay, guys, to the final theme of today, which is very topical considering it's mental health awareness week this week. So we're going to talk about sort of self-care during self-isolation, and sort of how to maximize your energy and your self-confidence sort of during this time, which I think is really topical at the moment. You know, we're all juggling all sorts of different things at the moment with work, family. So I think this is really, really important. So again, I'll hand over to Victoria and Arpad's insights on this, and then we're going to have the Q&A in a couple of minutes time as well. So we'll answer as many questions as we can, but over to Victoria and Arpad. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. At this point, I wanted to cover two things. Yeah, Victoria?
No, carry on. You're perfect, Carol.
Yeah, wanted to really cover two things. What can organizations do to assist existing employees transitioning into a new role? I think it's quite important when it comes to reducing the negative impact to displaced employees. What they can do is really provide career transition support that goes beyond helping them draft resumes, prepare them for interviews, and find opportunities. What tends to work well is doing trade-based assessments, which helps them identify and highlight an individual's strength and allow them to identify jobs with a stronger fit, but possibility and more importantly can restore their lost confidence. I think guided skills development as opposed to large self-navigated library, I think that increases the likelihood that they will find a new job quickly and succeed in it, basically. So, and another angle is what can you as a leader help workers with to thrive and build a foundation for growth. I think it's really important to continue developing a high quality relationship, showing empathy, vulnerability, and authenticity. I think those are the main things that I would recommend if you're a manager or if you're a director or a senior leader within your organization. Slowing down, asking meaningful questions, and really promoting basically everyone is flexibility, and I think that's important, especially working in still in isolation, and it's very easy to feel lost and yeah, just not have any guidance. Don't know if you have any experience. How do you do it with your team?
So for me in particular, when you're looking at self-care and how you deal with that sort of emotional piece, I think it's really, really important that we have that time to reflect on ourselves, both from a work perspective, but a personal piece as well. I always believe that you have to bring your authentic whole self to work. And I always look at life as a set of pillars. So you've got yourself as an individual, you've got yourself as a career individual, and you've got yourself as a family individual as well, and in whatever circumstances you may have. And it's about making sure that you can feel happy to bring all those together, but also taking that time to reflect and understand where your gaps are, what you might want to improve on, both from a situation perspective, but also really from an emotional perspective as well. So the one key thing I would say is from a line manager's and recruiter's perspective, nobody's expecting everybody to be on the top form at the moment. It is a really difficult time, but actually taking that time and being, again, self-aware about where you need to develop and where you kind of feel and sit and feel at the moment is really important. I take a real sort of open approach to sort of mental health awareness. I'm a mental health first aider myself, but I personally every night I sit and have this thing called a happiness plan, and I write down the things I'm grateful for, the things that went really well, my lessons learned to myself, what my hopes and dreams are, and what I'm really excited about for the next day as well. And it helps to really focus the mind on what you're trying to achieve, especially when we haven't got as much structure around us at the moment. But also helps you to go to sleep on a really positive note, and which again helps with the productivity the next day. Applying for jobs again, you can get application fatigue, and it's really hard sometimes to sort of you get a little bit blind to your applications of what you've written as well. So always get someone to review it, but also take time for yourself. Take that time out, reflect, go out for exercise, enjoy yourself, relax, because actually when you're your best self, you'll make your best applications, and again, your best interviews and things like that when you've got that opportunity. So make sure you maximize that mental health, the physical health as well, to give yourself the energy you need for that next role, and to give yourself that best opportunity. I think one of Arpad's other
really good. Yeah.
As I say, I think with your, I was going to head on to your next question, but you're here, so I'll let you ask it.
No, just wanted to basically see if Nick or Ross has anything to add on this front, and see if the society is doing anything particular health side of things.
Well, what I want to say is it's really important to pick up on Victoria's point, you know, about I love the idea of making a happiness plan. You know, it's not always easy to do. I know if you're having one of those slightly difficult days when perhaps you've just had a rejection and you suddenly think, oh, I don't know what to look forward to, but I think it's a really positive thing. In terms of the support we can provide, what we tend to find is that people often don't know how good they are, you know, so they come to us with a CV and it isn't the best that they've done. You know, you'd be surprised. You'd think that people would automatically know and be able to articulate that, but often they do need help. So don't be afraid to reach out for support, whether it's through us or through your own networks of friends, family, colleagues. You might be surprised that the way you're presenting yourself isn't really highlighting your achievements, and perhaps you'll be surprised at just about how much you've achieved. So I think it's really important, and it will be a real confidence boost as well if you've had some difficult times in your career, but suddenly you look back and you start to see some real positives, some really transferable skills. I can see on our chat we've got lots of questions, particularly from people who've done flight training and are not sure about the transferable skills, but there are many, and I think that's where we can help you with that through the society support and the information we have on our careers website, and really focusing on those transferable skills and knowledge. It will really help you, I think, to get that advice and not to feel that you're alone. There are people there that can help you with that.
Absolutely, yeah. Thanks, Ros. No, just one final point from me. I was just having a think, but yes, absolutely. You know, we are here to help with the society, and I'm sure there are lots of people there who are willing to support individuals, and particularly from my point of view with interviews. You know, unfortunately, rejection is a fact of life in terms of particularly with a lot of interviews, and from me personally, I took every single interview as experience. You know, you've done really well to get to that point, to actually get to an interview. You know, you've done really well, and you know, just take that as experience. And from my perspective, every single interview I went into, the nerves sort of reduced even sort of more and more, and you know, you almost become not an expert. We're never going to be experts at interviews because everyone is different, but from my perspective, the more interviews you go to, you've got more experience, and you know how to cope with certain situations in interviews, and you know how to look out for those trends in interviews and things like that. So you know, you've done really well to get to an interview stage, but take each interview as a piece of experience. You know, take that positive out of it as well. So that's it from me. Thank you all very much. So we're going to move on to the Q&A now. So we've been having some really great questions come in throughout the webinar. And I'm just going to sort of kick off first with a couple of questions. Let's have a look here. So this one here. So this might be one for Victoria, if that's okay. So that you mentioned about creating a career or a career development plan. Do you have any practical tips on how to do this, and what sort of things would you tend to focus on within this plan?
So I certainly do, and for anybody who wants a template, I'm full of these things, unfortunately, so you're most welcome to get in contact and get that. But for me, the key constituent parts are looking at 5 years and looking at 10 years and trying to think where you'd like to be in a life, but also in your career, and where you want to achieve, what you want to achieve there. So putting your aspirations sort of between now and then, and I'll be able to articulate those. and doing that as a bit of a front sheet, and including on that a value proposition for yourself. So in true sales speak, this is a bit of a sales pitch, and it's only 3 or 4 lines on who you are and what you're all about. And that also really helps with interview skills, to be able to really articulate, say who you are and what you want, both in the interview, but also when you're networking as well. So that's kind of your front page. When you're looking at the next sort of section, is drilling down on that 5 and 10 year plan and thinking about the courses you might need to do, the soft skills and experiences you might need to develop, the sort of network opportunities you might need for that. And then also, I tend to include also some pieces around self-reflection. So what my strengths are, what my weaknesses are, what for me makes me get up in the morning. So in particular, again, it's looking at your working preferences here, and I think it's really clear to articulate that, one, to yourself so that you remember it, but also you can use your development plan as a real tool in interviews as well, to show people what you're looking to achieve. And then the other piece is also looking at your personal values, and really, again, being able to articulate and drill down as to what your personal values are and sort of what the moral compass you have internally is as well. And then at the back part is really then drilling down and using all these tools and techniques to drill down and create a development plan with a timeline and actions in it. And again, is really then holding yourself to account to deliver on those. But again, using that with your either your potential new boss or your current boss, to ask for what you need. And also helps you develop a business case for that as well, because sometimes it's great saying we'd like to go on a training course in the future, but actually what benefit are you going to get out of that, and how does that fit into your career and your development? So it really helps you articulate that. But they would be my top things. But if nothing else, is having that value proposition, thinking about what you want to achieve in 10 years. And again, when you're looking at it, sometimes it's good to look back and think, in 10 years, what do I want to have achieved coming backwards? And that sort of time bound development action plan at the back as well. But so anybody happy to get in touch if they'd like a template, so I'm happy to help.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Victoria. Our next question is directed. I'll open this out to Victoria, Arpad, and anybody else who wants to join in. Many employers are looking for professionals with experience in a specific job role. For pilots like myself that have been recently made redundant, we have many transferable soft skills but don't meet the advertised job role. Or job requirements, I should say. If we graduated from university 5+ years ago, then should we be applying for graduate schemes, or should we be applying for other roles? And then the final part to this question is, at what level should we be trying to enter other sectors? So this is a question for pilots who have very sadly been made redundant, or are considering sort of what levels they should be applying at, or roles they should be applying for. So I'll open this out to anyone who wants to tackle this.
I'm happy to chip in at first. I can give that a little bit.
Yeah.
So for me, if you've got 5.5 years experience since post-university, I wouldn't be applying for graduate schemes. It's not to say you can't go for them, because you absolutely can. But I would say you've got experience, and in particular, if you're a pilot, whether it's a co-pilot or a captain, you've got leadership qualities, and also you've got, as you said, rightly said, a multitude of transferable skills. So it's really, when you're looking at those jobs that you're interested in, is being able to articulate that piece and doing that in the cover letter piece when you're making that application, or again, if you're working with a recruitment organisation or headhunter, to be able to sell yourself and do that. But I wouldn't write yourself off for applying for things just because you don't necessarily have experience in that particular sector. Across the board, people are looking for transferable skills. So it's just about explaining how relevant to that role you are somebody who can add value. I think also at the level, if you've got 5 years experience, it depends if you have that management experience and the sort of leadership elements of it. But I would say sort of a sort of mid-management position is absolutely acceptable thing to apply for. If you feel you have aspirations for more than that, do it. You don't ask if you don't get. And I think the other good thing, I think Nick mentioned as well, when you're applying for roles and you're getting feedback, that's the real value. And make sure you get that feedback and really drill into it with whoever it is you've applied through, to understand what the gaps are if you don't get an interview for it. And it will help you then either tailor what you're writing, or build that skills base, or realize actually that might not, if you get repeated sort of areas of the similar feedback, that might not be the angle for you. But for me, it's go for what you of interest to you, go for what you think you can achieve. But just because you can't tick every box on the piece of paper does not mean that you shouldn't apply for that role.
Absolutely.
Yeah, can I add something?
Yeah,
I really agree with Victoria, and this is, it's quite a common question, but we also meet, particularly in the society through our specialist groups, a lot of pilots who have moved into management roles, whether it's in an airline, itself, or an operator, or other parts of the industry. And you shouldn't be apologetic, for what you've done. You should be proud, and I think that's really important in the process. To become a pilot and to fly is a real achievement, and you do have a lot of transferable skills that you may not be aware of, and potentially leadership and safety, all sorts of things that are valuable to our industry as well, and the decision-making process, all those things can be of value. So I think it's really important to be proud of what you've done, and to take that confidence with you into a slight career pivot, if we can use that fashionable word at the moment. I think that's a really positive thing to try and do.
Great, thank you both very much for that. I'll move on to the next question. So this one, again, I'll open this up. I'm mid-career, a long-term government defence role. I'm in a reasonably senior technical role, and when I look at colleagues in more senior roles, for example, for a mentor, as you suggested earlier, I'm not finding anything to aspire to. What would you suggest?
So for me, it would be take some time to reflect. If those roles aren't inspiring you, have the opportunity to reflect and find out why. Is it the individuals? Is it the job role? What is it that's kind of holding you back there? If it's just particularly in the organisation, it's the individuals, I would say look wider. In particular with my teams, I always suggest that they have internal mentors, but also external mentors, because it gives that different perspective and it gives a different insight. And roles with the same title in different organisations do mean different things. So it can open up your sort of eyes to different things. It can open up your eyes to different career opportunities as well. But have a look a little bit wider as to what those other individuals are doing in that same space of those more senior roles. But I think the real key thing, and what it sounds like from your position, is to take that time to reflect and understand what it is, but also that you're not keen on that, and also to understand yourself and what makes you get up in the morning. Maybe that career path isn't the thing that you're as passionate about, and therefore can take the time to look at the wider sort of portfolio in either the organisation or in the sphere you're in, to help you meet your needs and get you excited. So take that time and really say look wider for a mentor as well, if that space is the space you definitely want to be in.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much for that, Victoria. Next question is a little bit more sort of technical, but again, let's see. Again, I'll open this up to the floor. So I have 10 years of experience in aircraft stress analysis. I'm looking at upskilling myself in data science due to limited options in the present sector. Will this be a good move and explainable as a valid career, or explainable as a valid career gap? Again, I don't want to come to Victoria again, but I feel like Victoria might know a bit more about this. So I don't know if you want to tackle this again, Victoria, for us.
Happy to, yeah. So good to hear we've got fellow stressmen. That's why I started out my career, being a stress lady, I should say, rather than stressman. So yeah, the data science piece is a really sort of big growth industry, and obviously with automation, AI, all those sorts of pieces, and the Bitcoin type stuff as well, it's a real area of significant growth. And I think, the fact you're taking the time and effort to reskill and upskill yourself into that sphere, I wouldn't see that as a gap. I'd see that as an enhancement in what you're doing. So I think that's how you articulate it. Don't think of it as a gap, just think of it as in continued career progression into another sphere. So definitely think it's a hugely worthwhile thing to do. Again, looking at the mentors and looking at where that upskilling will lead you, it's really important to understand what those roles look like at the end of that journey, and make sure that's right for you. Again, reach out to people. It's difficult to do shadowing per se at the moment, but again, if you've got people in that fit, and they can really tell you what those sort of jobs look like on the ground as well. It really helps you both when you're looking at that development and the sort of lines within it, but also in your sort of specialisms, but also helps you sort of again get the jobs when you know a little bit more about where what those roles look like as an end goal too. So absolutely worthwhile to do, thing to do. Keep going. Just articulate it not as a gap, but as a career progression.
Perfect. So
I mentioned earlier being on a number of. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, hello. Sorry, I've had a clash there.
Yeah.
Can you
Sorry, Roz, go on. Yeah, can hear you. Yeah.
Reiterate. As part of the AGP skills working group in particular, data science, data analytics, it's been we've been doing some road mapping of future skills, and it's become one of the key sort of areas for all different types of businesses within the sector, you know, looking at the way that maintenance is going, the analytics behind it, the amount of data we're collecting now and not using enough of. So I think it's a really key area.
Definitely. Thank you very much for that, Roz. And I think as an industry, you know, we are a big sort of topic at the moment is the sort of the technologies advancing the industry forward, such as AI and automation and things like that. So I think the data side and the system side of the industry, I think, is going to be vitally important, and that there's going to be the need for people to upskill and transfer from other sectors. So thank you very much for that, guys. So next question is that we mentioned key skills such as leadership, soft skills, and stakeholder management. How do these skills compare against the age of a candidate? For example, employers preferring young people as they would tend to offer longer service. So again, I'm not sure who perhaps wants to tackle this, but this one is again sort of focusing on whether, or sort of again, what employers tend to or might favour. But again, I think, as we've mentioned in sort of earlier on, it's really down to the individual's sort of qualities and things like that. But I don't know if anybody else wants to answer this with us.
So for me, it's about having the right person and the competent person for the job.
Go on, Arpad. Yeah.
Age, just wanted to add that age and other factors can't really play a role and shouldn't, and that's of course discrimination. And yeah, I think it's basically on its own, age will not disqualify or should not disqualify you. Basically, it's not something that you worry about really.
Yeah, exactly. You're absolutely right. And you know, if there is sort of feelings there, then with age, then is that really an employer that you want to work for? It certainly wouldn't be my choice. So then I think that again, that is very much down to the individual employer, but also the individual's strengths when it comes to the sort of showcasing of their transferable skills, such as leadership and those soft skills as well. So let's have a look. Got another question here. As a careers team within the aviation sector, what is your outlook on the employment market for graduates in these uncertain times? And do you see the market opening up again later in the current months? So regarding the market for graduates, as we saw from our webinar last week with one of our panelists, Jenny Edwards from Lockheed, and as Victoria has said, the sort of defence side of the industry is performing quite well. And I think a lot of organisations, and like Jenny mentioned last week, are still going through their normal sort of graduate and apprenticeship recruitment processes. Some things have taken a freeze, particularly maybe perhaps on the civil side, but I think the market for graduates is still going to be very strong, and there is as we know, there is a bit of an aging workforce across our sector, so there is still going to be the need for companies to continue to bring in new talent, bring in new skills from graduates, from early career professionals. You know, as we've been seeing as a result of COVID-19, the recovery might take a little bit longer than perhaps previous crises, but I think the market, particularly for graduates, in the short term is relatively uncertain, but I think in the long term there are still those organisations out there, those aerospace organisations that are still going to need to recruit and focus on new skills development and recruiting young professionals into the industry. But I don't know what anybody else thinks about that.
I would hasten the same as yourself, Nick. I think it depends what side of the house you're on, but we've still got a need for young people and young talent coming in. It's just a case of timing, and I probably, similar to yourself, can't really give you a forecast and outlook as to when things are going to look up. But no, we still have a huge skills shortage and talent recruitment requirements in the UK and across the globe within the sector. So it's just a case of waiting for that right time.
Great, thank you guys. The next question is in relation to sort of assessment methods. So in relation to assessments such as psychometric, numerical and verbal reasoning tests, is it perceived to be more important to complete all questions in the time given, or to complete a proportion of these at a slower pace in favour of accuracy? So Arpad, you might be the best person to answer this. Yeah.
It really depends on which test you're talking about. When it comes to personality questionnaires, time is not always of the essence. It's really about your responses mainly. Also ability tests like verbal, numerical, logical. And they're time pressured. That's why they're tricky. So you really need to balance it out. You need to get it right, and you need to get it right within the allocated time as well. And situational judgment tests, where they test you on real life scenarios relating to the job, they take time as well. But it's about your responses. It's about getting it as close as you can to the right sort of question. Unfortunately, with most of these tests, there is a right or wrong answer, and yeah, it's a balancing act, and yeah, this is why they're being used by many organizations, because it tests your ability, and it's basically a very good way to select.
Yeah, I think another key aspect, particularly for the psychometric tests, is again just trying to take your time. I know some of them are time constrained, but also to practice as much as you can beforehand is just so important. And from my own experience of doing endless online tests, many occasions being unsuccessful, unfortunately, but you know, it's practicing as much as you can, and there are some really useful websites out there again where you can actually practice these sessions. One is SHL Direct, where you can actually practice these sessions for free. There's quite a few paid ones on there, but you can practice them for free as well. And they're those typical sort of psychometric tests, numerical, verbal reasoning, and so on. But again, each organisation might have a slightly different system that they use, but to try and practice as much as you can these tests beforehand, and then you've got an idea in terms of what might actually come up. We've got time, I think, for one more question. So this person graduated from university in 2018 and has worked previously as a mechanic and quality engineer in the aerospace industry. What advice would you give for recent graduates who may have just started their career but did not did not get much time to develop their skills in a working environment. I think from my point of view with this one, particularly for graduates coming out of university with sort of minimal experience, is again going back to those soft skills, those transferable skills, and really showcasing and giving examples of where you can use those skills that you've developed, whether it's in a work setting, in an education setting, or even in your spare time or voluntary work, anything like that, in an aerospace related role. I think that is, again, going back to the skill side of things, how you showcase yourself on paper, but also in person, and how you can show an employer that you have got the skills to be able to do that role. I think that is a really, really useful thing to do. Quite easier said than done, particularly on paper, but there are some really useful tips in terms of what you can do in an online application form and on a CV to showcase the skills that you've developed. You know, if you're somebody who doesn't have vast amounts of experience in the industry, and as Ros mentioned earlier, just log on to our careers in aerospace.com website, and there are loads of sections on there about telling you how you can actually do this. So what sections you need to be putting on your CV, what you need to be saying in online application forms to showcase your transferability into this sector, for example. So I don't know if anyone else has anything else to add.
Say, you know, we deal with a lot of graduates, you know, very early careers, who are always concerned that, you know, during university they weren't able to secure an internship or work placement within the sector, but they were working part-time, you know, whether it was in, you know, Primark or Pizza Express or whatever, and they don't feel that they should be included on the CV. But employers will always tell you they're looking for experience wherever it comes from, and they appreciate that sometimes in your early career it's hard to get experience in the sector that you're training for, but there are so many transferable skills, particularly in terms of dealing with customers, dealing with people, dealing with problems, and, you know, the kind of maybe the trust that you've had if you've been, you know, in a supervisory role in one of your part-time jobs. So don't be afraid to use experience from outside the industry if that's what you've got. You know, you use everything you have got, and you'd be surprised what they pick up on, and some of the areas that they're really impressed by. They may not be the ones you expected. They may spend even more time on those than perhaps your group project at university in the interview itself. So again, you know, always be proud of what you've done and use it to your advantage. You know, everything you do in life, you learn something from it, and that's something you can take with you wherever you go.
Great. Thank you very much, guys. So unfortunately, that's all we've got time for questions. So thank you all very much, and thank you, Victoria, Arpad and Ros, for helping us out with those. So anybody who wants to follow this up, please email us at careers@aerosociety.com, and we can help you and follow up afterwards. But I'm just going to invite Ros, if you just want to just give a brief summary in terms of what we've discussed in this session, and then we'll wrap it up for this evening.
Yeah, brilliant. I will try and put my camera back on. It may not work, but just to say a big thank you to Victoria and Arpad again for giving up your time today. We're so grateful, because to hear it from the horse's mouth, I think that's so important for the listeners. You know, we've all been through highs and lows, and although this is the worst challenge for some people that we've had in many years, there's so many things we can do and so much useful advice that you've given today. I loved, you know, the happiness plan, about virtual video advice as well. That's so important. You know, I'm going to do the windmill myself next time, Victoria, before our next webinar. But might need a defibrillator out, you never know. But but no, that was really great. And you know, I think it's really important as well from Arpad talking about the difference between recruitment agencies and executive search. We've got quite a variety of people on the line today, so do, you know, target your search so you get the best out of it, because that will avoid some disappointment, you know, that you could have, you know, not necessarily had. But you know, we've said before, it will be challenging for some parts of the industry, but there are always bright spots. There's a lot of ways you can transfer between roles within our sector, both now and in the future. So take your time. Don't give up. Come and see us if you need support. And look at our top tips on the handout from today as well. There's loads of useful advice on there. And do get in touch if you want any more support that we can offer you. And thank you to Nick and to Rishi again for putting today's event together. And it went very smoothly in the background. And we will share some of those poll results as well after this, which were very interesting. So thanks for everyone for joining us today and listening in. Thank you so much, and the great questions we've had.
Absolutely. I just want to share my thanks to our panelists, to Arpad and Victoria. Thank you so much. Wouldn't be possible without you. So really appreciate that. Just briefly before we go, thank you all very much. Just to say, please do let us know if you've got any further questions or you want to have a chat to us. This webinar has been recorded and it will be available within 24 to 48 hours of this session being completed via our YouTube channel. So just search Royal Aeronautical Society on YouTube and it'll be uploaded there for you to watch back. You'll also receive a very short survey within the next few hours of this webinar, so we really appreciate your feedback. It'll just help us improve our future webinars, and this pretty much is probably going to be the norm for the near future, and if not for the rest into next year and the rest of time probably, and doing these virtual events. We really value your feedback on this. So, and then finally, we've got the careers website there if you've got any questions, and we can you can find out there further news, events, and other resources as well. So, thank you all very, very much indeed. Have a lovely evening or a lovely day wherever you are, and thanks a lot. We'll see you again soon. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.